Welcome back to Disengaged, the podcast. I'm your host, Leah Harding. So Disengaged is all about self-advocacy, right? But have you ever considered yourself to be an advocate for the children that are in your life? Are they trying to tell you something and you just haven't quite been able to put two and two together yet? Our next guest, Gloria Masters, is a survivor. She's a survivor on so many levels, and what I'm about to share with you might be troubling for some of our listeners, so discretion is certainly advised. Gloria, welcome to Disengaged. It's so good to have you on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. And You're in New Zealand.
I am, and it's meant to be a summer, and it's actually torrential rain with flooding warnings all over the North Island.
Classic.
Yeah, always the way. Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's so good to have you on, and I appreciate you reaching out to me to share your story and just learning more and more about you. I mean, this is such a hard topic to talk about. It's hard, like even for me to have this conversation in a way with you because it's just so raw and real and it's asking so much of you. And can you give our listeners a better idea of who you are and what your story is?
Yeah, sure. So my life began being born into a family where child sex trafficking, I believe, was the norm. And the reason I say that is because from a very young infant, my father started abusing me, and then his extended family would be given me as well. And the twist to it really, although that was horrendous enough, was that my grandmother, his mother, was the person that trained me into being the best child sex worker I could be. And they made a great deal of money out of me and were able to get lots of people involved. But, you know, with the child sexual abuse and trafficking, I never felt like a loved child. I felt like an object. And so for 16 years, that's what I suffered. And it was to take many, many decades for me to be able to even make sense of it, let alone start the healing from it.
I mean, there really are no words.
No. Yeah.
But when you were 16, how did you escape from this hell that you were in?
I was always told that my parents' separation agreement had been that the day I turned 16 I could choose who I live with and who I wanted to have involved in my life. And so I hung out for that date. And then when that appeared, my father rang. I was living at my mother's house, rang and was trying to manipulate me into seeing him and trying to bribe me to see him and go and spend time with him. And I just kept saying no. And to this day, I don't know how I found the courage to withstand him. I was terrified of him, as you will appreciate. But I did. And so I never willingly saw my father again.
It's shocking and it's horrific. But in our chat before this, you were saying that it is most common for abuse to happen by someone that you know.
Yeah. So we know, and it depends what country you're in, but between 90 and 93% of pedophiles are known to the child or family, and usually quite well. So the parents and the caregivers are the gatekeepers. And what happens is these predators have to get through that to access a child. But unfortunately, in 2026, we still have a large majority of adults that would believe an adult over a child.
When I think about like you as a child, like are there elements when you look back that you're like part of why you're doing this advocacy is to help you? Like it's looking back and being able to help yourself when you couldn't help yourself as a kid?
Not so much. I believe I had to be very healed in order to do this advocacy, because if I was still quite broken, I think I could cause some damage. So what I know is, because I've done the healing, and it's been hard work, in case you're wondering, to heal from all the years of that trauma. Um, if I still wasn't quite right, I could be giving messages and being having the public profile I do across the world, and actually causing angst or disharmony, or providing unsafe or unhelpful information. So I was very clear I couldn't do this till I felt healed enough to do it. And there's no shame in not being healed enough, by the way, to any of your amazing audience who are survivors. I see you, beautiful people. There's no shame in it. It is what it is, and it takes what it takes.
And you were saying, like, it's people that you know, and that means if you know them, you might be their friend. You might like them. That means you enjoy their company. You know, like, they could be the people that you invite over to your house. And so it does, when I think of it that way, it creates fear for me of like, well, who do I know that could be doing such a thing? But you, in your advocacy, you have tips for what you call safe adults.
Yes, yeah. And unfortunately, I've had to do a hashtag safe adult, because the stats, as we know, between 90 and 93% are well known to the family. So we can't assume that the adults you mix with and that I mix with are all safe. So we need to be very cautious. But I want to take away some fear for you, Leah. Try not to hold on to fear around someone you know being an abuser. Chances are someone will be. But our instinct is never wrong, and often we will sense something about somebody, or we will see that that person wants to spend time with a child as opposed to an adult, or that they want to keep offering to take the children away, or she. And I think it's just us having eyes wide open and always checking in with ourselves. Why does he or she want to keep hugging that child or holding that child close? Or why are they always insisting on a kiss or a hug goodbye? Which is another tip for safe adults. Please don't ask a child to touch you. If your grandchild or your niece or your nephew or your best friend's son doesn't want to hug you goodbye, that's okay. How about a high five?
Yeah. Or just goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because it's autonomy. You're teaching autonomy from a control. You have domain over your body, even as a child.
Well, you should have.
Well,
is
yeah.
the point.
in
Yeah.
a
But as
physical,
adults,
yeah.
what we do, and I've been guilty as well when my children were little, of saying, go and hug so-and-so goodbye. Don't do it. Don't do it. We've got to let children trust their instinct. We've got to trust children to do this, to actually trust their gut instinct, because we all have it and it's usually not wrong. But there's so much education that needs to happen, Leah. I would love to do a worldwide tour on this.
Oh, well, you're certainly starting, and I commend that. I think with the whole, like, there's a creepy adult, but, you still need to say hi to them. I think there's a level of, as the safe adult, not wanting to be rude or not wanting to come across a certain way. And I know in my own life, like, a personal story is, I remember in one of the churches that we attended, there was this one really creepy dude, but everyone loved him. His kids were in the youth group. He was on the board of the church, and I never liked hugging him. And my parents also did not enjoy how he treated us. In hindsight, we've all been able to come together as a family and be like, we would handle this so differently now, but we didn't handle it differently then. We didn't have the words or the skills, the tools of what you're teaching, but so much of it, especially in so many cultures, that you just don't want to be seen as rude.
Yes, and thank you so much. That is such a good point. Because what happens is we're conditioned and raised to have respect for your elders or have respect for other adults, and children do what you're told. And so we're having to change this so that children feel safe enough to grab you and say, Leah, I feel icky around him, or don't make me go there. And you, as the safe adult, go, Okay, I don't get it. Seems fine to me, but okay.
And trust the child in that way. So practical, so anti-cultural in many ways.
I know, I know. I've spoken to groups of parents actually where a parent actually said, and I quote, "Oh, I couldn't possibly stop my son from going to his house because they're family friends and he's such a nice guy. How could I ever accuse him of anything?" And I said, "But what's your 12-year-old son telling you? I don't like it when he wants me to get into the spa pool with him."
And
But
yet the kid still
because
goes there. Yeah, but the culture, yeah. And then if this parent that you're mentioning doesn't say anything, then who would?
that's right. And so, and it's almost then, how can you accuse a child? You've got to have an adult. You've got to have proof. No, we've got to actually start listening to our beautiful children and adolescents. The only reason they talk about this or will use the words is because they want it to stop. Most children will never speak of this.
But kids, you have said in a lot of your work, they tell you how they feel, and it can be very visceral for them. Can you explain that? Like their tummies and things like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, and thanks. I think that's really helpful. Children don't talk. That's an adult construct. We're adults. We're happy to talk. That's what we've learned. Children primarily emote and communicate and show us through their play, through their behaviour, through how they interact with anybody, what's going on for them. So any parent or safe adult that has a close relationship with a child will tell you this. They don't need to hear a word. They can tell when their child's off. The number of times a safe adult will not have heard what a child is trying to show them. They're not picking up what a child is putting down, which is, I don't feel safe. And it might be they show you through constantly pulling on your arm or constantly saying, my tummy's sore, or constantly wanting to stick by you. And you as the adult having a nice time with your mates, I'm using you as an example, Leah, will
Yeah, it's
say,
okay.
go and play, keep playing. And how often, me included, have we been guilty of that? The problem being the child can only try so many times and then they realise it's up to me. I have to just deal with this. The problem is they don't know how. So when you talk about the visceral, when you talk about children not using words 100%. And so what we as adults have to do is meet children where they are at. We have to actually go to where their languaging is, which is through play and interaction. We have to stop expecting them to meet us with words. They won't do it. It's not safe for them to do it. They're either being bribed, manipulated, or threatened about this. Now, a small child being told, I'm going to get your sister or you won't see your dog again, is going to believe that. Hence, the words never being spoken.
And they might not say, he said, they're going to get my sister. They might say, I don't want to go over there. And you have to take that as the warning.
Exactly. But the problem is they won't ever be able to tell an adult who doesn't feel safe to them, this person that you love so much is actually hurting me. Children can't do it because they believe the threats. Of course they do.
Yeah.
We believed in Santa, didn't we? We believed in the tooth fairy, didn't we? Well, some of us did. I didn't have that type of childhood, but I know my children did. And the problem being, children believe anything you tell them. I think there's just a lot that we need to do, and I think it's not difficult. It's very simple, practical tips and techniques, but we have to start educating because we've got to save some kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's this really terrible perfect storm if the child is being bribed or threatened, and then the adult is being groomed to think that there's nothing actually wrong with this person. Can you touch on what you've learned about grooming and what that can look like?
Yeah, so to me, there's in my opinion, it's just my opinion, there are 4 distinct groups that are groomed. There's society as a whole, there's community in terms of the local church it might be, it could be the local football club, it might be the local kindergarten, It could, and then we go to parents and caregivers. So that's another group, third group. And then the fourth group, of course, are children.
And the adult in this setting could also say perhaps like, well, they took me skiing last weekend and they were so fun to be around. Like I had a great time with them. So you don't like, you're going to be fine. Like I had a good time with them, or being groomed in that way, like where the adult has had only positive experiences with this person.
Well, that's right. And the other thing too is we are only human. So we can't beat anybody up because they haven't seen the signs. But what we need to do is just say, hey, as well as listening to the person that's trying to make you feel great about who you are and trying to get your child or children away from you some of the time, just start to please give attention to what your children are showing you. Now, alone, some of these behaviours that children show may not indicate that sexual abuse is happening. It could be that you had a recent cancer scare and your child is scared to lose you. They don't want to let you out of their sight. You know, like there could be other things as well, but there are a cluster of things. I just think, you know, generic messaging is children are small people. Children can't protect themselves. Children need us. And what we're noticing is that until we start respecting that children's languaging is different to ours and that we need to pick up what they're putting down, these stats are going to keep growing. And I know over in your neck of the woods over in the US, this is a huge problem as well.
And you've introduced a hand sign.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that? And
yes. So this global hand sign is the universal sign for help. So I didn't come up with this. This began in lockdown 2021. And it began with a group of women in North America who were locked in houses and some were being domestically abused. So we'd use that while they were on a Zoom call pretending to talk about a recipe, signalling they needed help. So a couple
I did not know that.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I came up with a different hand sign for under 16s globally to show they're being abused sexually and not safe. And a friend from Northern America said, don't recreate the wheel, use this, but just add that in. So that's what I've done. So under 16s showing that, and we know it's being used. We've had reports of it. So
can you give me an example of like how it has been used?
Yeah, so we had an example where a 7-year-old at her local primary school in Auckland signalled her teacher. Then the teacher went to the principal came in and the child did the same thing to the principal. So that child was then spoken to and removed from harm.
Wow. I literally have goosebumps all over me. So with all of this, I mean, it is all about knowledge and looking for signs and being a part of this conversation, that it's not survivors and non-survivors. It's humans working together to keep children safe and learning from survivors. It should be this flow. And are you seeing more of that as you've gone on, or what is the conversation like? Give me a pulse on it.
Yeah. I'm always going to say there could be so much more done. Like to me, this global hand sign could be on billboards. It could be in bus shelters. I mean, across the world. Because if children don't know of it, they can't use it. But you see how it neatly ties into children not using words, but they can show us through their body, can't they? So I think that's a really powerful tool. And I think as well, education being key. We don't have an appetite for it globally at all. People don't like this topic of conversation because it goes against our safe adults' morals, ethics and values. People struggle to talk about it because it's uncomfortable. Who wants to think about child sexual abuse? But my challenge back is, well, hang on, we've got up to 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys being sexually abused. We can't afford not to sit up and do something, can we? So that's why I do what I do. That's why I've written Keeping Kids Safe, which is shortly to be released into every early childhood centre in New Zealand. Thank you to our wonderful US sponsor for doing that. And we do want to get the message out because it's got all those techniques to actually give safe adults to use. people don't know what to do, Leah, because this is never really talked about. So that's what I'm trying to do, is bring not the normalization of child sexual abuse forward, but the normalization of the conversation.
Right. And that helps the conversations that we then have with children to take them more seriously. And you're saying that having this sign visible, sharing an image like this, like the hand of the universal sign for help, or having that on a billboard is helpful. I think a lot of people, myself included, just don't know how big of a problem it is. And sometimes, I'll be on the highway and stop to use a restroom, and on the inside of the door on the rest stop, it'll say, "Are you being trafficked, or are you being abused? Call this number." Are things like that effective, do you feel?
We don't really have that for children in our country, so I don't know. I think
A child wouldn't even be able to read that.
that's why the global hand sign is so good.
Yeah.
But I think we need to educate adults on what to do, because children can't save children. Adults save children. They need us. And whose job is it to protect children? If not you, if not me, then who? It's got to be a collective responsibility, which I think you mentioned earlier. And all #safe adults everywhere need to be part of this. And so that's why people say, I don't know what to do. That's why I've written the book. So we actually get people educated on what to do. I think at the end of the day, we can just say, yes, that's such a shame, and move on to where are we next going on holiday. But I don't think we want an opportunity to go by, if it's possible that the child 3 doors down from you is living this reality. How could we ignore that?
So some things that, were common in my childhood have become less common now, like being encouraged to hug the creepy dude at church. I don't think my parents would do that today. I know that they wouldn't. But things like sleepovers, what are your take on sleepovers?
So we've got this thing we now call sleep unders. So send your child to someone's house if they want to. Let them have fun. Let them play. Let them have dinner. Pick them up by 9 o'clock.
Are there other things like that are
many things in that book? Yeah, 100 tips. Simply because how well do you know the family? If you're 100% convinced the family are safe and your child's really comfortable, great. But is it necessary for under 12s or under 15s to have sleepovers? Is it really? Maybe we need to be a little more onto that. I think these types of things don't change a lot. The other thing I want to say is, as a family, sit down and have a pizza night and everyone vote on an emoji on their phones that is their family's signal for come and get me now, no questions asked. So if a child is in a place or a situation where you are not, and you get, say, the Grinch emoji, you stop, drop and get in the car. You don't respond. You don't respond with, are you okay? What's going on? Because an adult that isn't safe might see that. You just go and get the child. And if it means it's 1 a.m, or if it means it's 10:30 at night, you knock on that door. And if you need to, you make an excuse like, oh, I forgot we're going to Grandma's first thing. Got to get him now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's things like that, Leah. We've got to start to educate adults so that they can educate children. It's not a child. A child cannot save themselves. A child cannot educate themselves. That's our job.
And to give them tools to let you know that something is awry, and along with observing are key. I know in our family, if we were ever to call and say Uncle Henry died, like our little thing was, if I was like at a party and there were drugs and I felt uncomfortable or whatever, we had been told, you call and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot to tell my parents earlier, I got a text or whatever, but be like, Uncle Henry died. He'd been dead for like so long and no one was close with him. But that was like, even as a teenager, feeling like I had a secret weapon to protect me, and that kept me connected and under the umbrella of my parents, even as a teen. I mean, sometimes we will say that to each other if there is something that's just not going well. And I think having, again, I said it, but the tool is huge, and for our listeners to be able to build up on that and read your book, that you have hundreds of these types of tips.
Exactly. So the book is actually keeping kids safe. The website where all the free resources for adult survivors and some prevention stuff for safe adults is where that is housed in the website. And we also have the podcast, which is Handing the Shame Back. But look, there's so much that needs to happen, and there's so much more. You imagine, Leah, if you had 10 of your listeners decide we want to help do something in our community around this. So there's a group of children that are automatically going to be safe. And wouldn't that be something?
Absolutely. What do you hope your legacy in this field is?
Well, I'm very proud of the fact that I've got that global hand sign for children, because I know how children communicate. And keep in mind, I was a survivor as well. So I know what it's like to have the experience and not be able to speak. So I think my legacy is to save some children. If I'm remembered for nothing else, I think it's let's save some kids.
I just feel like what you say gives me like clear tips of like what to do in certain scenarios. And like if a kid is pulling on my arm at like a social event, and I like, that is a moment where I can be like, wait, Gloria told me that I should like take this kid seriously and not just like brush them away. Because even if it's not sexual abuse, I should speak to this child like an adult that they will one day become. Because if I'm at a cocktail party and I'm pulling on your arm as an adult, like, Gloria, we gotta go, you're not gonna like shoo me away.
100%. And I so love that you've mentioned that, because that right there coins what happens in probably over 90% of situations. A child doesn't have the languaging to say, Leah, I don't feel safe. But the fact that they constantly want to cling to you or hide behind you shows you something's wrong. They're not being naughty. And as you said, if I was clinging on to you at a party or just wanted you, you would naturally turn and say, are you okay? What's up? Now, here's a tip that might help with that as well. Remember, children don't speak. So maybe you could actually pull out of your bag, your phone, and just write a message, what's up, and get them to write back. Because that way they're not using their words, they're actually showing through.
When you say they don't speak, do you mean typically a child won't tell you that this person makes me feel uncomfortable? You just kind of have to read the context clues, but they would write it maybe?
Well, because then they're not breaking the threat of, you can't tell anyone. If you tell anyone, I'm going to get your mum. Or if you tell anyone, no one will believe you. Or if you tell anyone, I'm going to kill your dog, which are things that are said.
So by typing it, they could maybe
Well,
think,
just by
I'm not telling
writing it,
any.
or you could draw a picture, get them into another room, draw a picture and say, are you safe? Yes, no, and they can tick yes or tick no. There's a whole lot of stuff that you can do. But the point is, thank you, because you're getting it. You see what I'm putting down, you're picking up is children show through behaviour. Let's start responding to that.
And then if you do have an emoji that they understand, they just type the Grinch emoji and you're like, that's all I need to know.
Okay. Now, if it's happening within the family, you won't know. They won't feel, So there's a whole, so many layers.
That's so depressing. That's so sad.
But unfortunately it is there.
Yeah. And the like respect I have for you is so deep, and that you would not only share your story with us, but that you have shared it with folks all over the world and continue to. Is there something that helps you advocate for yourself in that process, since this podcast is ultimately about advocation, in this case for children?
Yeah, what helps me advocate for me is that I know that if I got through, so can other survivors. If I could get through that, other survivors can overcome as well, that there's always hope, and that for our little ones, bad behaviour is not always indicative of a bad child, because there is no such thing. I was out of control at school because it was my only safe place. And really what I was doing was screaming for help. So I think those three things. One, let's take notice of children's behaviour. It's telling us something. Two, be that adult that chooses to do something with this information. And three, legacy stuff is I will always be remembered for trying to save kids. And I think that's very grateful and humbled by that.
And highly admirable. So your podcast, Handing the Shame Back, is a very visual thing for me. Have you been able to hand the shame back fully, would you say, to your perpetrators?
Yes, and that came about, interestingly, because I decided to forgive. Now, I didn't forgive for their sake. I did it for me because I realised I was carrying a backpack full of stuff that didn't belong to me. So me forgiving meant I could move on freely. So I did. I never spoke to them, by the way, but I did it in my own way. And that's, yeah. So, yeah, I handed the shame back. But I just knew that when I found my voice and I could look people in the eye 4.5 years ago, I was handing the shame back. And I know that survivors across the world love it. We're now in 135 countries.
Wow.
Which is brilliant.
Incredible.
Not funded, but I have a purpose in life, as you can see, and that is this, to support adult survivors and help prevent children from being sexually abused.
Well, thank you so much for coming on Disengaged and for sharing with all of our listeners. It's really been a real pleasure getting to know you.
Thank you, Leah. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the work you do.
Thank you so much for listening. Let me know what you learned, what you took away, and be sure, please, to share this and also follow this podcast for our bi-weekly updates. As always, this episode was produced by the Anthology Group.